Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers.
Hey, that's not Erica. Who is that?
It is Bo Lake, your Eerie Travels producer.
Yes, yes. Now, this one's a little different, travelers, because we are recording this one sans Erica, because Erica is literally in transit. So we kind of had to do this one on the fly, as it were. But it's one of those that I know she's going to hate to miss this one. But
She won't.
Bo, you mentioned you don't know who this person is either.
The name is not ringing a bell. Like when you
Okay.
go into it, maybe I'll know, but I don't think I do.
Okay, so when I started talking about this, this was the grandfather of everything paranormal, but he doesn't like to use the term paranormal, which is one of the reasons why I don't like to use the term paranormal.
Mm.
Um, as I was a kid growing up in West Virginia as a nerd, I've been in Ohio, I've been in West Virginia, I've been in Kentucky, and I'm in all these, Bible Belt states in the 70s and 80s. And unusual stuff was just looked down on, right? I mean, this is
Mhm.
the height of satanic panic, and you can't play Dungeons and Dragons, you can't do anything science fiction, and you certainly can't do anything with ghosts,
Right.
right? And that was, you're messing with demons, you're dealing with the devil. Um, but as a kid, I would flock to libraries and the school library mostly, but also, public libraries when they didn't have what I needed. And I'd find those low numbered sections on the periodic table that had this one section, and that's where you'd find your books on the Loch Ness Monster, or you find your books on Bigfoot. But there was a section of parapsychology.
You'd think
And
they would have taken that out of the library with all the
that was
Satanic Panic stuff.
even the one plus was librarians even then were rebellious, and also this was kind of a hidden section. Nobody looked at these books. It was there. I was the only one ever checking them out, especially in these areas. I used to joke that the one of the cool things about growing up in West Virginia in the 70s and being a nerd was that I was too smart for the religious, persecutors to even realize what was going on. So I would check out these books, and I don't even think they knew they were books. So,
Mm.
they certainly couldn't read them. But it was,
What are these
all
things on
right.
this page? I don't
Yeah, exactly.
understand.
Wiggly lines. That's terrible. But a lot of them were written by one man. I would find some written by Ed and Lorraine Warren, who I knew, and I would write to them. And then I would find some written by, that were written by Charles Berlitz, who had written the Chariots of the Gods and things like that. I think that was actually uh, Eric, somebody whose name I can't remember. But I would write these authors, usually care of their publisher, because I didn't have their
Mm.
addresses and stuff. This was not, but a lot of times you could look up, there was this thing called phone books, and you could look up what city they were in, and then you could call and get their address. You could just call people and get people's
I am
addresses.
not that young, Mark. I know what a
Okay,
phone book
I'm talking
is.
about this as some of our younger travelers out there. And so I would do some little research and find these people's addresses, and I would write them. And then some of them would write me back. And this one guy had literally written dozens, as far as I could tell. And I wrote him, not expecting much response, but got a response almost immediately. And I wrote him several times over the years. And sadly, I was not smart enough to keep those letters before I moved
Mm.
on to a second stage in my life through college and all that, not even realizing how important these would be now to what I do now, as well as just to my life in general. But the man's name, who we've been putting off, but is in the show description, so none of you were really surprised by this, is the man Hans Holzer. And that's HANSHOLZER. And he has been credited as America's first ghost hunter. Now, he is not the first ghost hunter. We think the first ghost hunter is a lady from England in the 1500s, but we'll talk about her another day. But when we go into the real ghost hunter history, we'll have to put that on the clackety clack for future
That's a
episodes.
good idea. I'm writing it down.
Yeah, put that one down. So, But you said you didn't have never heard this man's name, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay. So when he was alive, this man was world renowned. Um, he was basically the inspiration for a movie called Ghostbusters.
I know that
Um,
movie, yes.
he wrote more than 140 books.
Damn.
Um, and most famously, he investigated this place in Long Island. And he went there right after a series of murders. And then a family moved in and said terrible things happened in there. And that house was called Amityville. So today, though, right, every television station has more ghost hunting shows than there are history shows on the History Channel. There are
Ghost
more,
Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Lab.
yeah,
I can't
Dead
even think of any more.
Files, all the ones that I know, and even things like Expedition X and stuff like that. Some of them take their inspiration from the show called In Search of years ago.
Mhm.
He was a advisor on that show. So he worked with Leonard Nimoy back in the day. So if you watched any of that, you have to thank Hans Holzer if you've enjoyed it at all. Now, he
Mhm.
was a parapsychologist. He spent his life studying unexplainable, strange things. He studied telepathy, he studied hypnosis. He hated people calling it the paranormal. He actually taught courses on parapsychology at New York Institute of Technology. Um,
Which is making me think of Ghostbusters, the beginning
ex-
of the movie when they're
ex-
doing the telepathy thing.
yep, exactly. And he wrote all these books, but again, his passion, his heart was going out and investigating claims.
Mhm.
Now, he always had a medium with him. He did not like things to detect cold spots. He did not like technologies. Probably one of the reasons why I don't like it either. It's some of his
Mhm.
letters to my young self where I didn't realize how much this, impressed upon me. But now thinking back on them, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't remember his medium's name that he used all the time. But I do remember that they contacted the spirit of a Native American chief, and that was who they always talked to. And
Hmm.
that was who the medium was channeling all the
Like it was
time.
like their guide.
It was their spirit guide. And that's how they were able to talk about these things. Now he believed in that 110%. That was his method. And he had a Polaroid camera. That
Yeah,
was
I was
his
gonna say it's
key to
odd that he's like, I believe this medium 100%, where he's so critical of other things.
of other things, right? And he had a recorder usually, and that's
Mhm.
one of the things he talked about was he had his tape recorder. But he thought they could be fouled, and they could be, and that's one of the reasons why I love him is all that. So now he died in 2009. So he lived a nice long time and lived just an amazing legacy. So let's talk about his early days here. Let's just start at the beginning, right? So he was born in Vienna, Austria on January 26, 1920. And he started having this love affair with the supernatural very early on. One of the things I remember him talking to me was because I was a young kid talking to him. He said, oh, he started in kindergarten
Hmm.
and he got sent home with a note because he was scaring the other students, telling them ghost stories and folklore stuff, fairies and things like that. So I'm like, okay, that's why we bonded, in this. And it's not till the 1960s when he starts actually taking it seriously, right?
Mhm.
He wrote his first book in 1963 called The Ghosthunter, which I have right here. He read a book called, oh God, I was never able to find it. It's called Occultism in This Modern Age. Uh,
Sounds like a cool book.
yeah, by Dr. Osterich, a professor in Germany somewhere. So he told me that that was the book that changed his life. That was the one that inspired him. And I told him Ghost Hunters what inspired me. He was enrolled at the University of Vienna in the 1930s, where he studied archaeology, which he had recommended to me, and history, and I want to say numerology or something with numbers. And he left just before the Nazis take over in 1938 because he had a Jewish family,
Mm.
and he comes to New York. And that's another thing. My family fled Europe, my Romani heritage and Jewish heritage. And so we all came to America in the 30s on both sides of my
Mm.
family. So he comes to Columbia University, and he's actually starts studying Japanese
Why?
for some reason. I assume for war effort, something like that. But he gets his master's in comparative religion, and then goes on to get a doctorate in parapsychology from the London College of Applied Science.
I
So
want a doctorate of parapsychology. That sounds
there
cool.
are a few schools that do offer it. It's one of those. It's an interesting class. Duke University had a famous parapsychology lab for a long while, but a lot of be careful of a lot of those online places. You can get your master's degree in ghost hunting and all
Yeah.
that. Let's until the New York Institute of Technology brings it back. I think maybe we better just stick with
Avoid.
what we got. Yeah.
Just read some books. Read The
So he had
Ghost Hunter.
already, in the 60s, he was investigating hauntings all around New York, right? And he documents those early ghost hunts in that book. And
Mm.
that's one of the ones that just filled me with glee, right? It's just so cool. And I believe he describes it as ghosts were basically a surviving emotional memory of someone who has died traumatically, usually tragically. And then I remember the quote is, but is unaware of his death. That was his theory,
So
which
if you
we
have a
now,
trauma and die from your trauma,
yeah,
you just keep going on and you have no
because
idea you're
you didn't
dead.
realize you died, right? And one of his other quotes was basically they're unwilling to part with the physical world, and they just are staying in the spot where their tragedy and the emotion where existed, right?
Mhm.
And that's what we now refer to from Nigel Keel, who's a fiction author, but I love his theories, which is the stone tapes, the things that have
Right.
imprinted. And that's so he's not talking about more active, things. This was his solid theory on ghosts from what he had experienced and what
Mhm.
he had studied. And I remember her name now. Ethel Myers was the medium that he teamed up with, and they go to investigate the Amityville house right in the 70s. He had murdered his family, the Ronald DeFeo Jr. of Amityville. We'll have to do a whole episode on
Yeah.
Amityville, but we'll do a little bit here because that's his most famous case, right?
Yeah.
Um, he murdered his parents and four of his siblings in 1974. For those that don't know that story, basically, he claimed demonic voices told him to do it. The brutal crime is often lost because everybody knows the movie, right?
Right.
Where the family moves in, and then, within a week, they're scared to death and have to leave the house. Um, but he was 23 years old, and his family were all asleep, and he went to a bar and cried for help, saying, "I've basically killed my family." He first said it was a mob hit, and so they actually took him to the police station for protection, but then they realized very quickly, and so he already confessed. He confessed pretty quick.
Mhm.
But when he went on trial, they were basically doing insanity, but they said it was demonic voices in his head.
They lean satanic panic instead of being like, oh, he
Yeah,
needs mental help.
mental help. Well, they were saying he needs mental help, insanity, but due to
It's because of
due to
demons.
demonic possession, right? And what's sad about all this is, the house later gets owned by, the next family, and there was a lot of other things going on with the DeFeo
Right.
stories. Again, we'll come back to that another time. I'm already digressing. I apologize. So, Holzer and Ethel are acting under these assumptions of traumatic things trigger ghosts. So they go to the Amityville house. And now the family who moved in heard disembodied voices, smelled strange odors, finding odd ooze and slime from the walls, and they moved out. And in 1977, Holzer goes to the house to see what the heck's going on. And they reported making contact with another Native American chief, which was gosh, I can't remember, but he was a Shinnecock chief
Mm.
spirit. Told them that the house had been built on a sacred burial ground. And that was what Angry Spirit had possessed DeFeo. And when Holzer took photos of the house, he noticed there were strange halos around all the bullet holes that DeFeo had hit in the walls and stuff. So it's controversial for a couple things. One, the Shinnecock people didn't even live in Amityville ever that we know of. And he wrote his book based on all this, which inspires the second Amityville movie, not the first one. And that's Amityville: The Possession, which does a
But
very
was there a graveyard under there? Did anybody, take a
no,
look?
they've never found anything there. And now the first thing also with that was the first movie, they'd already been investigated by our other good friends, the Warrens. And Lorraine were the ones who talked to that initial family,
Mhm.
went and investigated. They saw some other things. They said it was demons and it was a portal to hell. And that also was embellished by their ghostwriter who wrote the
Right.
book for them. And
Is
this
that
is
when the family moved out, like right
yeah,
after the investigation?
well, during right after the investigation. And the Warrens, even there's some talk that some of the controversy that the Warrens were told the ghostwriter, make it scary, make it scarier. That's your job, it's why we're paying you. And
Yeah,
so that's why Amityville movie is sometimes people like, hey. But all we know is some bad stuff happened there, right? So
right.
it is ripe for a haunting.
A lot of trauma.
A lot of trauma, a lot of things happen. So did Hans Holzer and his medium find something? Maybe they talked to something, who knows? So him as the father of the paranormal, he hated that title. He was the original ghost hunter. That's what he referred to himself as a scientific investigator of the paranormal. He disliked the term supernatural, hated
Mhm.
it because he says that means it's beyond science. No,
Right.
no, 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 no,
And he
no.
thought we could figure it out.
We will figure it out at someday. One of the phrases he used all the time is that he passed to the other side. So can you see where I love this guy so much,
Yes.
right? One of the big things is in 2013, after he's dead, long after he's dead, Dan Aykroyd wrote that he became obsessed with Hans Holzer. And that's why the idea of Ghostbusters was born from studying him. He was asked how he would like to be remembered, right? And Holzer published this thing. I want to say it was like 2005. Yeah, 2005. Says, I want to be remembered as a man who told the truth. I won't have a tombstone. Cemeteries are real estate wastes, and I don't believe in funerals of any kind. The sooner you burn the body, the better. It's just a shell. Mankind has so much more to learn,
I love that.
right?
He's not wrong.
He is not wrong. He did all the stuff on Amityville's backstory, right? And he just escaped Nazi Germany. Come on, as a child, he wrote. There was a oh gosh, a play he wrote before he started ghost hunting and all this. He wrote theater reviews in London. So he's got all this just great history. He was married once to Countess Catherine Genevieve Buxhovinden, which is
Wow.
a name I would never know. They did get divorced sometime later. His daughters were Alexandra and Nadine, and he had about five grandchildren when he died. I have not kept up with them. I should. I should reach back
Mhm.
out and see if any of them want to keep talking. But I'm curious to see what any of them would say about their old dad or granddad, right?
Yeah, like if they are following in his footsteps, if they think he was crazy, like they're like memories of him even.
Yeah, yeah, I wonder. So let's take a quick break. I'm going to come back with just a few more things that he studied that, beyond ghosts, because like I said, he did some other things. And we will be right back.
Prepare to be devoured. The Wolves of Wharton is a 6-part complete book series by Eerie Travels producer Bo Lake. It has been called dark and visceral, steamy, dramatic, and a fresh take on the werewolf mythos. If you like action, adventure, a large serving of body horror, and some steamy relations, the Wolves of Wharton series is for you. Pick it up wherever books are sold or at linktree.com/bow__lake.
And we're back. So what do you think about this guy so far?
He seems to have like the craziest backstory. Every new
Right?
thing you say about him is the wildest thing I've ever heard. He was at Amityville. He was married to a countess.
Yes.
He seems
And
awesome.
I just love scientific investigator of the paranormal. He did use paranormal, but he really hated supernatural. But I also don't like paranormal. I think I like preternatural. That's just it's more for me.
I feel like
I've
he
heard good
probably
friends.
would like that though, that you've
I think
decided
if
that
he
that
had
word is eh.
I think if he had gotten a little more in with Shirley Jackson type, I think that would have been good. He also hated the word belief, right?
Huh.
He says it suggested an irrational adherence to ideas not supported by fact. And he really hated magnetic anomalies, he hated EMF, he hated cold spots, he hated all that stuff because he's like, that's just things. We're not
Yeah,
really
I mean, to be fair, how do we know that like an EMF like change is ghosts?
right,
Someone just decided that that was ghosts.
right, right.
So
Like
and then
it's
you're not like focusing on how like it affects your body or anything. You're just like, oh, the light's blinking over there. Ghosts are here.
yeah. One of the things I remember in a letter was he said that he was never afraid of ghosts, never afraid, all his years, because ghosts are basically just humans in trouble,
Yeah.
which was cool for me. He was definitely one of those ones we want to help him any way we can, and they definitely I remember he was like they were always confused as to their status. Everyone he's talked to, right, which he had talked to through his mediums and stuff.
Yeah.
He did believe he was a Wiccan high priest. He was
He's getting
also
cooler and cooler as we go.
he was vegan before vegan was cool. He did not believe in anything from animals and all that, which I didn't think. I just thought vegetarian at the time, but now I realize he was even talking about milk and stuff like that. He did believe in reincarnation. He told me that he vividly recalled a battle he was in the Scottish Highlands
Hmm.
in the 1600s, and that he researched it and found out it was the Battle of Glencoe in 1692, and he knew information about it that he could not have known without having read up on it. He didn't read up on it until after he had
Yeah,
realized this battle and he started researching it. So I think that's amazing,
that
right?
is really
And
cool.
so maybe he's now that he's passed beyond to the other side, maybe he's
Who is
back
he
around.
now?
Could he be back around again? So some of his books that I highly recommend is he did one called Yankee Ghosts, which was his first book about American ghost stuff, and that was in 66. One of his more recent ones was in 1998. He did the Hans Holzer's Travel Guide to Haunted Houses, which was one of my influential books, right? At that point, I
Yeah,
was
travel,
travels and
haunted houses.
I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of things. But he did other occult stuff. He did Beyond Medicine, which was in the 1970s. He did a book called Inside Witchcraft in 1980. And in 1992, he did one that might be up your alley, Bo, Love Beyond the Grave.
Oh, what is
So
that one about?
it's love story, ghostly love stories about people in love with ghosts, ghosts in love with humans, as well as ghosts in love with each other, ghostly couples and stuff like
Oh.
that. So, and so there's for your romantic reading, right? He was one of the first ones to kind of say that he felt that the other side, right, life on the other side was very much like this side,
Mhm.
but also bureaucratic.
Huh.
So he felt that the dead who become restless and wish to return back to Earth, but they must fall in line and register with a clerk. So a little bit of Beetlejuice there, right?
Sounds a lot like the DMV.
Right. And they actually put that in his New York Times obituary that he might be getting in line to come back, right? I thought that was pretty epic. And he got so much flack for Amityville toward long after he was gone because of what happened before him, right? And
Right.
also that whole thing with the that never happened. They couldn't be there. All that doesn't mean again, mixed communications could be anything. I do debunk when I can, and I think he was miscommunicated with. I think,
Mhm.
but I think some of the pictures he has of the crime scenes are incredible. For years after that, this other family moved in and they still hadn't fixed all the bullet holes. That's just crazy to me.
Because
And
they
and
were
all,
they were probably like, oh, we could use this as a tourist spot. Because, crime scenes are like tourist places in a lot of cases, especially back in the day. So they were probably like, people can come in and we'll sell tickets. It'll be awesome.
it's pretty wild. The fact that I wrote this guy and he wrote me back for no reason. It was just a pen pal I had. And I would write, "Oh, I just finished reading your book on hypnosis and what do you feel?" And he thought it was a way to treat people. This was going to be, and now what do we do? A lot
Yeah.
of people go to hypnotherapists, and some people still say, "Oh, it's voodoo, it's not real," just like we always joke about chiropractic medicine. It's not real. It can't be.
Mhm.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe these things are just things we don't understand yet.
And it's
And
we've talked about with other people too, where they're like, it might just work for certain people who have
right.
a certain intention. So maybe people who say, oh, this isn't a thing, they don't have that intention or that drive to wanna, I don't want to use believe because I know he doesn't like that word,
Yeah.
but just are not on that wavelength.
No. Now, his daughter Alexandra Holzer, she has a travel channel show
Mm.
called The Holzer Files. And so she is carrying on the
Is
legacy.
it still on?
It is on. I forgot about that. That she did continue on. So maybe we should reach out to her and see if she'll come on our little show. But
Yeah, that'd be cool.
who knows? But I do love that, he didn't believe in cemeteries. He didn't believe in all this, and that he was very adamant that there were no, actual like things that just become something else. But he also did believe in unusual things. Now, he didn't talk about UFOs. He never talked about Bigfoot. He was on In Search Of. He was
Mm.
one of the frequent go-tos for In Search Of as a talking head back before we had talking heads that we do now. He was an advisor specifically for the ghost stuff. And that was, him telling Nimoy as well that, I've never been afraid of a ghost. So I do treasure the letters I got from him. I wish I had kept them. That was one of those. I moved away, went off to college, went off to do TV shows, and then became a dad. And by the time I remembered about them, I'm sure my parents had tossed them in one move or another.
I'm
Uh,
sure he's probably seen you on has seen you on TV and was like, that guy seems familiar to me.
I doubt most of my TV stuff didn't start happening until the 2014 era.
Mm.
So just a few years apart. But it was nice to know he was still kicking around until 2009. And I can't believe that we still to this day owe a lot to this one man who, carried, he was also standing on the shoulders of giants from
Yeah.
before, but he definitely became the biggest giant I can think of. And I would put him up there. And I think the only other guy I would put up there is Nigel Keel, who we've mentioned many times
Yeah.
on this show. He was a fiction writer and a television director, but he did the Stone Tape and Ghost Watch and some of these amazing. I love the science bent, right? It's
Yeah.
science. It's just a science we don't understand. And I think that is what we are still going through with all this. This is science that just of another name. If anybody else out there can think of somebody who has had this sort of impact on this level, I mean, we talk about the shows today, right? We've
Yeah.
got, I think what started it all big was In Search of, Leonard Nimoy, all that. We had Carl Sagan and Cosmos. They hinted at this stuff, but never
Right.
really did. Of course, the big Chariots of the Gods back in the day brought all the UFOs to the forefront and all that. I think you're talking like Rod Serling and Alfred Hitchcock, who were the fictional guys who brought some of this to light. And now we've got, Ghost Hunters started it all on Sci-Fi Channel. It wasn't even on a regular channel, it was on Sci-Fi Channel.
That's
Um,
a regular channel, Mark.
I watched it every day. That was the only channel I watched back then,
Oh, it was
mostly
such a
for
good show.
mostly for Battlestar Galactica reruns. The 70s one before they
I
relaunched it.
was I was gonna ask which one.
Oh man, no, I Dirk Benedict and Jane Seymour for the win. Thank you. So Sci-Fi started doing that. They had some other fun shows, and then I guess that morphed into what Jonathan Frakes doing his stuff. Of course, we had Ripley's Believe It or Not would do occasionally some ghosty stuff. Then our wonderful Unsolved Mysteries would
Oh,
do an
love
occasional
Unsolved
ghost one,
Mysteries.
right?
And they
Robert's
would sneak it in there too, so you'd think it'd be like a
another true
crime, and then
crime,
it's like, oh, ghosts.
ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot. It's like what? And we've even investigated a couple places from that, and I've worked with Ripley's now myself. For a couple, yeah, we did road trips with Ripley's pilot. It never went to series, but it's out there on YouTube and stuff like that.
You
Um,
did tell me about getting to go in like the back rooms at Ripley's and how cool it was.
and they have so many things, and they have a couple Hans Holzer artifacts, which was
Hmm.
cool to see even then. And and now we've got Adventures, we've got all those ones we mentioned
Yes, we
before.
do.
And Dead Files is probably the closest to what Hans and his team did, which I have to admit I haven't seen Holzer Files. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Now I
Um,
want to watch it.
but that's how they did it, where the psychic would go in first, and then the detective would research the case and figure out the detective side of things, and then they would compare notes at the end and see how it works. And Holzer went in with the medium though, and would just see what they said and would take pictures of what they were telling him to take pictures of, and then he would take pictures of things that he thought might be useful. Now he did stuff on dowsing rods, he did stuff on, Celtic ley lines and things like that. As a Wiccan, he was open
Yeah.
to a lot of things like that. He was also one about intent and all that as well. So I think
What
all
happened
that,
to Ethel?
I'm gonna have to look her up, see what happened. But I know she passed.
Maybe she's, I was gonna say, maybe she's still kicking around.
No, I know she passed as well. I just don't remember when. So we'll have to
Mm,
look her up. I'm sorry I didn't even think about researching her a little bit more before we did this, because this was so impromptu and quick.
yeah.
And also, gang, that's why it's going to be a little short.
Because we're trying
Um,
our best.
we did what we could. Thank you all so much for indulging me in talking about one of my favorite people, and that I never actually got to physically meet. I feel bad. I met the Warrens. I met a few other of note. Met Leonard Nimoy.
Okay, bragger.
Hey, it was one of his last con appearances, and everybody was getting Spock stuff, and I walked up with an In Search of book, and he was so happy, which was very, very cool. Everybody else was signing the I Am Spock, getting the I Am Spock book signed, and I walked up with In Search of, and he laughed because I had bought the I Am Spock, but then I handed him that one to sign, and he laughed, and that was great. Wow, I'm floored because I got to say all this stuff, and it's just I didn't realize how much he had influenced me until I
Mhm.
started really researching him again and realizing, oh my God, see you on the other side. He was the one who coined the other side. He was the one who coined not supernatural, but paranormal. I still think preternatural is the best. So we'll go with that. That'll be my thank you, Shirley Jackson. So I'm basically the love child of Shirley Jackson, Nigel Keel, and then we'll throw in a lot of Hans Holzer there. So that's
He does seem like your like kindred spirit. Like you in another times is this guy.
yeah, I think we definitely he was definitely a father figure to me. And I didn't realize it. So but anyway, gang, thank you so much for joining us on this crazy little side excursion, a little eerie travel. For your travel for this, you can go visit the Amityville house. No, wait, no,
No, don't go there.
you can go there
People
and take a
own it.
picture outside. They don't mind as long as you stay on the sidewalk. Just don't go into the house. It is a private residence, and they say there are no ghosts and everything is fine. You can go visit some of his other locations. I would recommend going to your local library and checking out some Hans Holzer books. My favorite would be The Ghosthunter, or The Ghosthunter's Favorite Cases is a huge collection of some of his older stuff. And if you can find it in a good used bookstore, they're usually a little pricey, his early stuff. So just be a little careful with that. But that would be my recommendation. But always we'll put links to some of the books that are available. All this stuff is a lot of his books are still in print, over 100 still in print. So out of over 140, which any of us would be happy to have written that many books, right, Bo?
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. Have you read
Yeah.
all 140 of his books?
I haven't, I don't think I have. I'm looking at some of these going, I don't remember that one, but I have read some collections of his that are huge that may have had,
Mhm.
some of these from the 60s, because you got to remember these were paperbacks from the 60s. They're,
Yeah.
less than 100 pages and very quick reads, which are fun. But
I
with that,
think you can fit another 140 books on your bookshelf, I think.
I think I could easily, Yeah, we got the new house, so I need more bookshelves. So
Yep.
it's not a you have too many books problems. It's a you don't have enough bookshelves problem. That is what it always is. But again, thank you all so much for indulging. Check the show notes. We'll put as many links to the books as we can. We will also have a lot of fun with this. Bo, thank you for indulging. Erica,
Of
I hope you're
course.
having safe travels. Again, thank you all our Patreon subscribers. That just keeps going and going. Thank you all for joining us, and it helps keep the show on the road, and helps us do more travels and helps us do fun things. Share, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We say that every time because we're legally required to do that. And
It's the law.
it's a lot. All right. With that, travelers, I'm just going to end it with make sure as you are out traveling and going to haunted locations, keep a handy notebook, take your Polaroid camera, and maybe a medium that can talk to a spirit guide for you. Keep your eyes open and watch out for things from the other side. And we will see you over there on the other side.